This month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by Allison Cook, Lindsay Trebet, and Super Inframan. If you'd like to help support the show, you can do so at wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight we're doing something kind of special with a bunch of people. So I'm going to set this over to Chris Ernst, who's going to introduce everyone he's brought with him.
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much, Seriah. So we essentially have today or tonight with us, or whenever you're listening to this, the core team for Bright Rectangle Films, which is consists of me, Bill Darman, and Drew O'Doherty. And Bill and Drew and I work together on The Hill and the Hole, which is going to be premiering, should be out right now for those of you listening to this on Amazon Prime, and also on Corpse, which are two feature films that we're releasing through our little kind of micro studio, Bright Rectangle Films. And we also have with us one of the stars of The Hill and the Hole, the illustrious Adam Gorightly.
Hello.
So welcome everyone. And Chris, the first time you were on was for Corpse, and that was about 2.5 years ago or so.
Yeah. Oh my God. I don't even want to acknowledge how much time has gone by. Yeah, it was a while ago, and since then it played at a couple of fests. It had a good premiere at the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival in 2018, but it's a weird film for anybody that did listen, and any of the Patreon the patrons that got to see the special link that I put up there. It's a weird little film, so it's it has to find its niche, but it had its little run for festivals, and yeah, we're releasing it now on Amazon along with The Hill and the Hole. So we're back to talk about our stuff and all sorts of weird things.
All right, so Adam is starring in The Hill and the Hole.
Yeah.
And how did this all come about?
You asking me?
Yeah.
Either of you.
I think that would be like Bill and Adam, because Bill first made contact with Adam. I think you have to go back and talk about Mandate a little bit, huh, Bill?
Yeah, I think so. So Adam and I we first engaged. I think it's when we were coming out to California, Adam. That must have been like 2015. So we had a series. This is going back to like 2010, 2011, where it was this road trip series where essentially we were like Jim Brandon's sort of travelogue to the weird, which is it's called Weird America. Not sure I'm sure everybody here is familiar, but great book, kind of apocryphal, and certainly the various locations are really. They're sort of ingrained in like 40 and lore and everything else. So we were kind of knocking these off our list. And at some point, I don't know, I think we had some sort of correspondence about Brandon before our California trip, that leg of things. But anyhow, we came out to do a piece on Jack Parsons at Devil's Gate Dam. And we interviewed Adam out there, and I thought we hit it off, and I think during the interview itself, Adam, I was sort of like mentally casting you for something. Chris and I had, we were talking about these projects, and I'm like, Adam's got to be in the next thing we're doing. So that was how it sort of germinated, I think, on our end. But Adam, I don't know, what was your recollection of how that came together? It's a little hazy on my end.
Well, yeah, that's basically it. We had, corresponded prior to shooting the Mandate episode. And, you contacted me and I said, come on out. We had Greg Bishop there that day at Devil's Gate, where infamous and, the whole lore behind Jack Parsons. It's located near JPL and apparently he conducted rituals there, and shot off some of the early rockets in that area. So there's a lot of history over that Devil's Gate area. A lot of spooky history.
And people can still watch. Are the Mandate episodes still up on YouTube, Bill, for people that wanted to check it out? Or
so I think we took down a lot of the early stuff. That trip, which we called it Weird War. Again, I don't know why. I don't know what any of the motivations are ever with that series. But since I wasn't really involved in it, I can say I really like them. So objectively too. Yeah. So Chris, I mean, you were like a spiritual advisor, and you were definitely featured in so we did like an H.P. Lovecraft series in New Hampshire, etc. But that specific one, I mean, that was I believe that's up and available. So it's Mandate 33 on YouTube. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So The Hill in the Hole, what is this based on? And it has very esoteric connections in the storyline as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to lead with that too, Bill?
Sure.
I only say that because this is the way that we work in Bright Rectangles, that it's kind of like any of us can bring up sort of a project and put it forth. And I want to acknowledge that this was, in the same way that Corpse was something I kind of pushed forward, and then we all collaborated to make. This was definitely something that you had, Bill, in your back pocket. You were like, I want to make a movie of this. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Just so that's why I'm turning it over to you, so that you can, because it's got some rich history and some real emotion behind it, I think.
Putting me in the hot seat. Yeah, no,
exactly.
I mean,
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I was going to say it probably goes back to, so initially, this was a long time ago. I mean, we've, Chris, Drew, and I have known each other for decades now, and we had a message board in the aughts, and we were talking about projects back then, and I believe at the time, Lovecraft's Day In had just fallen into the public domain, and Chris was talking about doing a short for it, and I was like, that's a great idea. And at the time, so it must have been mid-aughts, 2005.
Probably.
I was going through a Liber phase, and I had just read The Hill in the Hole, and I realized that sort of fell within that same. There's this weird loophole period for public domain stuff. It's just this no man's land. I think it's if the copyright wasn't renewed in this period between 35 and 45, get what it is specifically. Yeah. That all of that stuff is in the public domain. So it's wow.
This story was in. Was it Night's Dark? What was it? The first it was published in. It was the collection.
Was Unknown. It was in Unknown mag. Oh, the collection was Night's Black Agents.
Night's Black Agents.
Yeah. So that was Libra's first, but Unknown was sort of that was Weird Tales. It was Rich Man's Weird Tales. Weird Tales sort of dominated the 30s, and then Unknown, I believe, was supposed to do the same thing in the 40s, but it kind of fell off. And lots of A.E. Van Vogt shorts, Theodore Dreiser, and Liber. So Liber had a lot of his stuff, early stuff published there. So yeah.
But for people who don't know, Liber ended up. I mean, Fritz Leiber. If people are not familiar with who Fritz Leiber is, he's kind of I would say for anybody, and especially I think the audiences for Where Did the Road Go, assuming that most of you have some vested interest in Lovecraftian, fiction, if not in general, fantasy or science fiction. I mean, he's the guy who originated the term sword and sorcery. And he has these I want to almost say it's he's, I don't know, what was the thing about the Sex Pistols? Nobody liked them, but the 6 people who were at the show all formed really great bands. And I feel Fritz Leiber is kind of a similar, everybody, people in the know love Fritz Leiber.
He was a writer's writer. All the great science fiction writers. A lot of them pointed to Fritz Leiber.
Yeah,
and
totally.
He was pretty sophisticated writer too. It just wasn't sword and sorcery, science fiction. He brought some adult themes into his different stuff he wrote. And I haven't read that much, but there's a wonderful story that I have read, and I've told Bill about this before, called "The Man Who Never Grew Young." Just an awesome piece of work.
Yeah, he was like the consummate paperback, prolific paperback writer. And to Adam's point, definitely adult themes in later years. It was a bit of a dirty old man post Our Lady of Darkness, and his son actually, I believe his son wrote an essay about his later stuff.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, the stuff is great, but it's yeah. He went places. He definitely went places, and he was constantly pushing things. And his early stuff is definitely quaint, especially The Hell in the Hole. By in comparison to some of the the stuff he was writing in his 60s, 70s. I think he fell off. By the time he hit 80, but he was pumping them out. Pretty late in life.
And he's mostly his big like the big. I think the thing that people, if they know him for something, it would be the Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. If anybody knows those stories, which are sort of like seminal, sword and sorcery stories. But of course, as Adam said, being one of the many things that he did.
Okay. He also wrote. So he influenced, like Michael Moorcock, who wrote Elric, responsible for like the whole multiverse concept in comics and things like that. I mean, he had direct influence over writers like that, William Gibson, and through George R. R. Martin. So Leiber was he was definitely sort of seminal. And his stuff was great. He was an early contemporary of Lovecraft. In fact, he was corresponding with Lovecraft up until Lovecraft's death. And
that's right.
He was, both him and his wife. And they were pretty intense correspondence as well. I've got a collection. Unfortunately, I don't think Leiber's letters have survived, but Lovecraft's letters have. And they're really interesting because the Leiber and Lovecraft are sort of diametrically opposed in certain ways. But they also had, their Venn diagram sort of, I mean, they came together on certain things. Charles Fort specifically, they both had, a deep abiding interest in Fort. And I would even say that insofar as Leiber was trying to pull some Fortean themes through his work, he may have been the stamp, his Lovecraft stamp in his own work is just this overt sort of Fortean thread that he would weave through some of his stuff. So he was terrific. I mean, if you haven't read him, you definitely should. So how much, like, when you watch this movie, how close is it to the original book?
It's a short story. It's actually in the public domain, so you can go out there and read it. I think it's just out there if you just Google the name. And it's like 3 or 4 pages long. I mean, it's a short.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was really, it's expanded greatly from that. I mean, I guess, and Bill, you can add anything if I don't cover this, in a concise way. But, the idea was that we would take this sort of germ of a weird story, and expand it using other like myriad subjects and topics and like tropes and themes that are involved in like high strangeness and everything from high strangeness to like cult cinema and stuff like that. So it really was like a structure around which Bill created this larger script and this larger narrative.
Yeah,
and
totally.
you delve.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. That was it. It was just working from that. And I would even say to a degree, it was just trying to do things in the spirit. Like how would Leiber expand this? That was sort of the spirit,
Yeah.
So.
So you've added in, like, for instance, the element of giants.
Yes, definitely. So that was coming from, a lot of these, in choosing to shoot it in the Southwest, we had actually, in the very beginning, we had once we decided to do it, we had been talking about, Bill had suggested that we shoot it up near like Sonora, in the sort of that area, which is actually kind of near around like between San Francisco. If people don't know where this is, it's like east of San Francisco, near the Rockies, as part of California. Really amazing kind of landscape there. That didn't work out shooting there, but we did have some connections in New Mexico, and both the Sonora area and New Mexico both have their own sort of like legends of Forteana and weirdness. And so one of the things that we kind of leaned into was the whole myth and legend around mound lore and the quote unquote giants and the remains of giant skeletons supposedly found in some of these mounds.
Which the Smithsonian supposedly disposed of. Yeah. I mean, that's the love. A lot of that. I mean, we kind of borrowed from different areas. So like the Lubbock Cave, is it Lubbock Cave? Am I saying that right?
Lovelock. Yeah.
Lovelock Cave. Yeah. That's the sort of, probably the most famous legend, right? I think of the sort of of these giants, not of like the skeletons being found, but this is like the race of like tall, red-headed cannibal giants, I think.
Mm-hmm. The Paiute. Yeah, it's Lovelock Cave was. It's off Humboldt Basin. And that's the source of like these. They were known as the Saitaka. I'm going to butcher pronunciations left and right, but I believe it was Saitaka. Yeah. It was part of a Paiute sort of cosmological myth, and even sort of the authenticity of the legend is obviously in high dispute, but it's this was drawn from Brandon's Weird America as well. Just this little excerpt that one of these skeletons was somehow the local Freemasons had stolen a skeleton and they had kept it stuffed away in the back of one of their lodges.
Nefarious ceremonies and blood sacrifices. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So.
And I mean, some of that, like, we wanted to use that. I mean, obviously, a lot of that is, gets into that sort of realm of fairly racist, like, Native American burial ground type things. So I think what we tried to do is take what we like of these legends and like extract that without having it be too much about like that, the mystical native. And I think in the film, at least, none of that comes through. It's just about the weirdness rather than it, kind of engaging in that, the not so cool depiction of specifically like Native American culture being that.
Yeah. I think, for instance, there's, have you seen Bone Tomahawk?
Not yet.
Kind of, no. And that, I mean, to a degree, it definitely borrows from this same story. And it's just I don't know. Varied reactions to some of this.
Yeah, that's definitely. That's totally different. Like that's like the brutal realism take on it. Bone Tomahawk, which is a good film. I totally like cave dwelling cannibals.
But so the giant myth is really interesting though, because they were supposed to have originated in the Mount Shasta area, and sort of they were sort of imperialist. It sounded like there was this giant war that was spreading out from the Shasta area out east, and some accounts have it coming as far as the Cahokia Mound area, which is in St. Louis. So it's I don't know. There's like a broader sort of thing there, and it's not really clear if these are embellishments by like early colonists or if these really are Paiute legends. And we're not expert enough to say. We just found it very interesting. Yeah. These.
And I think from go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, I wanted to interject something about these legends. And I know Bill came out, and I don't know if you ever made it out to the East Bay Walls. They also call them the Oakland Wall or the Berkeley Wall.
I've been running all over to find them, but I never did. They're in Tilden as well, right? They're really hard to find. So,
what is that?
I know, and Olaf Philipp knows about them. Well, they've been there for eons, and people really don't know the history, but there's sections across the Bay Area through Oakland and Berkeley, and I had a good friend of mine, Louise Lacey, years ago did some research into the Berkeley Mystery Walls, and she talked to some Native Americans who kind of knew the lore and history, and what some of them told her was that the Native American tribes, or whoever they were afraid of the walls. They stayed away from because they were erected by these red-haired giants who were on the other side of the wall that they didn't want to mess with. And that was basically what she got out of it. This lore of these giants, in California.
Really wrapped up, and Olaf had also mentioned, was it the Klamath tribe that I don't know. There's all sorts of threads throughout that whole area. It's really interesting. Somebody should write a book about that. That's if they haven't already. So
the book, I mean, the most famous book, the one that's sort of, well, not necessarily about those tribes, but is about this whole Smithsonian thing that Seriah was mentioning earlier. That's Richard Dewhurst's the Ancient Giants Who Ruled America. The missing skeletons and the Great Smithsonian Cover-Up. Yeah. I need to remember the name of that book. I think that's one. Yeah.
And I was going to have him on for that, and he stopped doing interviews about it right before I contacted him. Yeah.
Well, there's been a lot of pushback against it. I mean, it's essentially like every skeptic, not that I'm sure there are, there's fact and fiction mixed in here, but that I know this myth has been pretty heavily attacked by skeptics. Must be hard.
Yeah.
Well, it's also one of those things where there was something in the Smithsonian where they were told to ignore the giant cases.
Right.
And that seemed to harken back more to the idea of confirming things in the Bible. The same reason they wouldn't acknowledge anything flood related despite the evidence of worldwide flooding.
Right.
Because they didn't want, this is when science was a fledgling thing and was on the verge of being wiped out by religious beliefs. So they didn't want to give any push to the scientific side of things because they were afraid they were going to lose.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a whole contingent of people that believe that what these giants are the biblical Nephilim that are, some sort of hybrid race. Yeah, exactly.
On the other end of things is, the whole, was it William Hull or George Hull, the Cardiff Giant, the hoaxer responsible for the Cardiff Giant?
Right. Yes.
And he was, so I mean, which is interesting because there are so many, I think Ralph Waldo Emerson was taken with that, I mean,
a bunch of people were,
Yeah. It was a lot more really pervasive back then. So it's an interesting sort of thing that's become a very, very difficult topic to discuss. It's very loaded. So
you went and saw when you were doing a lot of those, you saw a lot of the mounds, like when you were doing the mandate stuff, going on the road trips, didn't you, Bill?
We did. Yeah. We went to Grave Creek Mound in Mounds.
What?
Yeah, you just faded out.
The internet demons just killed your answer. All right.
I don't know if he's still there.
It's okay.
Somebody
else.
Yeah, there you are.
You're back. I think somebody else had a question, though.
You're sort of back.
Yeah. Anyhow, we visit Cahokia, Grave Creek, and others. Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, and they're striking because they all have. I would definitely say that there's striking similarities at each of those locations. Like you find that Serpent Mound is inside a crypto explosion. It's like a don't know how to describe it. It's sort of like a caldera. It's a crater, but it's as if it imploded from the inside out. And Shasta, they're obviously highly volcanic areas. So you find like mounds within within these areas that have lots of geological activity, or they impacted by a meteor, or they so it's, you find that. You go out to these sites and you're like, yeah, of course, you'd spend 100 years erecting this giant earthwork here. Yeah, I mean, I get it, So, but it's Cahokia is interesting.
Go ahead. Did we lose him?
Cahokia.
Cahokia is interesting because there's a mound there that isn't. It isn't discussed so much, but I believe they pulled something like, must have been like 20 or 30 skeletons from a single mound. So I mean, you hear these stories where it's not clear whether or not the skeleton stories are true. I mean, if these are what the sources are for some of these, if the skeletons were plants or something else, but then. Right. Then there's definitely evidence that some of these mounds were excavated and they pulled these bodies out. Moultonborough in New Hampshire, I think John Moulton claims there were 3,000 pulled from one mound. So it's, I don't know, it's just like trading baseball cards with mounds, but it's there's a lot of statistics that you could really easily get into with some of these that are kind of interesting. So.
Now, the walls we were talking about over in California and stuff, now, are they small? Like, are they low walls or are they high walls?
They are low walls.
That's what I thought.
From what I've seen, and basically just, rock walls. But they've been there so long, nobody really knows the history of them, Aside from the anecdotal stuff you hear, like, my friend interviewing some Native American tribes and getting the legend and lore from them, but nobody really knows when they were constructed, who constructed them. That's why it was kind of interesting that Louise had some of these tribe members telling her about the association with these red-haired giants.
Yeah. For most of what I've heard, I feel like just, in mentally aggregating all the stuff that I've read and listened to regarding it, it seems like most of the actual like anthropological research that's done with native tribes that, have been tracking these places, throughout their cultures, that most of them are like, we didn't build these were here before.
Right.
Which
it's
I
that
find,
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think is that's kind of the most exciting answer as far as I'm concerned.
And we need to throw in a shout out for Jim Brandon, because a lot of this type of research started with him, and we were talking about Weird America earlier. In a Weird America, he kind of it's a travel log, and kind of a hard book to find these days, but he looks at different Fortean sites across the country, traveled around. He started looking into some of the mounds in Weird America. Then he expanded upon that in his book, Rebirth of Pan, which is another kind of classic in the...
That's even harder to get these days.
Yeah. And so, all these influences inspired the movie, The Hill and the Hole.
Totally.
And there's also sort of a extraterrestrial paranormal element.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, the, not to have too many spoilers, but, the let's say that, the experiences that, or when we depict people going through these sort of like supernatural experiences, a lot of it was drawn from sort of experiencer, symbology and like imagery and stuff like that. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, we're kind of throwing, this is in many ways, it's like an Adam Curtis, everything is connected type, movie. Everything is connected. There is no genre, DIY, go out there and make your crazy midnight movie. But I mean, that's kind of the way I feel like, I don't know, not to do too much like inside baseball, but you and I, Seriah, have been talking about this idea of like new Forteans, and Bill and I have been doing these interviews with different people, that sort of are working in the Fortean space. And one of the things that I think that is, from talking to some of these folks and just our own research is that, that's one of the things that I think is special about looking at things from a Fortean perspective, is that there is this sort of all-encompassing, this agnostic, approach to things that allows you to, believe, well, in sort of the chaos magic way of things, believe nothing, believe anything.
I think what the film does, in places it reminds me of Twin Peaks, because there's some weird phenomena that goes on, but nobody's quite clear about what it is, but that's kind of how weird phenomena works.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. Representing weird phenomena is like one of the things I think from a filmmaking or, art perspective, because obviously, the stuff that I do, even though I research, Bill and I research most of this stuff, ourselves, it's not like we're creating books, we're not hard researchers like Adam, but the way in which like trying to represent that, I think, is one of the things that, anybody who's dealing with phenomena of any kind, like, how do you represent the unrepresentable? And I think that's usually in a lot of films, for me at least, what makes them less interesting is when they're trying to represent phenomena in a way that it's better probably not to show it than to show it these days. At least that's how I feel. And you can, because it's so difficult to accurately represent something that, in many ways, though it does have these commonalities, is so subjective.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm not sure if Chris, have you touched on the screen memory facet of your approach to doing sort of like effects work and creature effects stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I've talked about it specifically. This comes from, I actually did in the, my day job is I teach at a college, and, part of our academics and part of our research and scholarship means going to do lectures at conferences. And so a couple of years ago, I did a lecture. My paper that I was presenting at this conference, the Society for Cinema and Media Studies, was on David Lynch and his depiction of the supernatural as essentially being like screen memories. Like everything that's being represented supernaturally, the only way you can represent that is through screen memory. And so I kind of talked about that, and I actually talked about Mike Clelland's book a little bit, which was nice to kind of get that into an academic conference to talk about Mike Clelland. That's kind of the way that I approach at least doing when I'm making films, and I'm trying to represent, the uncanny, which I've been doing, probably at least since grad school when I started getting into the stuff. That's always sort of been my way of thinking about it, is like, there's no way to represent the uncanny or supernatural except through a screen memory.
And doesn't that hold true of a lot of Lovecraftian stuff too? Like, most of his stuff is unspeakable,
Yeah. Oh, totally.
So how do you represent that other than something symbolic for it?
Yeah, completely. Yep. And I think that's one of the things I think that is, for all Lovecraft's personal foibles, as a writer, he got that. And, it doesn't really matter what he was scared of, but that idea of like the unnameable, I think, is it's resonant. It's really resonant.
Now you had mentioned the intersection of underground cinema with the occult, and how does that connect in through here?
Oh, sure. Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me, at least, is Kenneth Anger. And if people don't know who Kenneth Anger is, he's an experimental filmmaker and author. He was around in the 60s, part of the California countercultural scene there. His finger was in so many pies. I mean, he made a film with Marjorie Cameron, Jack Parsons' Scarlet Woman. He was friends with Bobby Beausoleil, Manson's, killer. Not the person who killed Manson, but one of Manson's people who killed people.
Right.
And He created this film, which was essentially like a thelemic ceremony. He was also big in sort of like the queer underground culture at the time. So he's like, I think for me at least, it was probably a triumvirate of him, this even older experimental filmmaker named Maya Deren, who's a like sort of seminal filmmaker from the 50s who did a lot of, she was heavily into voodoo and did a lot of like anthropological research in it. But she made this film called Meshes of the Afternoon, which is one of the earliest sort of, I think, like true dream representation films. It's from like the, it's old black and white 16 millimeter film she made with her husband. And then the third person sort of in that triumvirate would be Alejandro Jodorowsky, who was this Spanish filmmaker who almost made Dune at one point. If anybody's ever seen that, there's a documentary out there about the unrealized version of Frank Herbert's Dune that he made, where like Salvador Dali was, doing the production design for it and stuff like that. Never ended up happening. It's a great documentary if you want to go out there and look at it. But he was a filmmaker that made these films. The one most notably, I think, that, engages with the occult is Holy Mountain, which was essentially like his symbolist film engaging with like Christian mysticism. But, it incorporates Kabbalah and tarot, and it's, a hodgepodge of this sort of, really highly charged erotic imagery. So at least as a filmmaker, I'm not working, at the level of these people, but they're the kind of people that inspired me, in terms of understanding cinema or looking at cinema as being something, with which you can engage the occult that's not simply representing it, that's using, the language of cinema as a tool itself to create, a work that incorporates these practices. And so for me, at least, now I won't talk too long about this, but when I made Corpse, it's with people that don't know, Corpse is this adaptation of The King in Yellow by Robert Chambers. And so, King in Yellow being this sort of classic, piece of weird fiction, if not a seminal, one of the seminal pieces of weird fiction, examining it as this like modern myth and trying to sort of build on that myth and participate in this collective world building. I used a lot of production processes that were sort of ruled by like occult indeterminacy practices. So the I Ching, tarot, and certain sort of like different rites that I don't want to talk too much about, that, were sort of involved in this, the generation of the film, along with sort of representing what I was representing in it. So working with the actors and working to sort of build the script when Bill and I were doing this, a lot of the ways in which I made choices were based on these sort of like essentially these like these tools, occult tools, to try to have it be, I don't want to say visionary, but like or channeled or anything, but in order to make these decisions, I was incorporating these things that took it outside of myself, which really comes from experimental film. I mean, that's a huge part of structural materialist filmmaking, which was something that was, concurrent with a lot of magical revival practices going on in the 60s and 70s. It was this filmmaking technique where, you were concerned basically with inducing some sort of reaction in your audience. For instance, the guy who I studied with, my mentor in grad school, was this artist named Tony Conrad, and he made this film, The Flicker, in the 50s, and it was intended to basically induce hallucinations. It was a strobing, flickered light that you would watch in a theater, in this enclosed theater, and he had he was a math guy at Harvard, and so he came up with this particular mathematical rhythm that he felt would send people into like a hypnagogic state. It doesn't necessarily work, but that was his intent. And, it was pretty revolutionary for the time. And so those kinds of things are things that I still, I love films that entertain, but I also love films that do other things too.
Right.
I think in certain parts of the film, there's like a strobe effect going on. Were you trying to do that?
Yeah, I mean, that ended up being more of an aesthetic thing. Just it's become part of like a style, but yeah, there wasn't anything. The Hill in the Hole doesn't have any nefarious backmasking in it. Corpse definitely does. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is people should watch Corpse backwards?
Yes, exactly. Well, if you go, I mean, we have two great offerings. I feel like a salesman now, and that's definitely not what I'm trying to do. But I like sharing my work with people, and I think we have two films that, equally like, especially during this particularly weird time. If you don't want to watch a film that is, kind of difficult and intense, don't watch Corpse. Watch The Hill in the Hole. It'll be awesome. You'll love it. But if you want something a little bit more intense, as one of the few reviews said about Corpse, brew up some mushroom tea and enjoy the art school vibes.
Corpse is it's an experience. Not to take away anything from the streaming video, which we'll be making available, I guess, within the next few days. Corpse is really it's an experience. Like it's a total movie experience. Like I would love to see Corpse on the biggest screen possible. And we kind of did that in New York with it, and the audience had a visceral reaction. In fact, Liam Kelly, our lead in The Hill in the Hole, he physically, I think I saw him stumble up the aisle after the credits rolled, and he was kind of holding the wall, and he told both Chris and I can't talk to you guys right now.
Yeah.
So, which was the best possible reaction, I think. I don't know, Chris.
That's pretty much what I want. Yeah, I want people to be vomiting. Yeah.
I think he was like vomiting psychically at that point.
Like psychic vomits. Yeah.
Psycho vomit. So
psycho vomit.
Psycho vomit. Yeah. Dun, 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 dun.
And why the name Black Rectangle, by the way?
Oh, Bright Rectangle. That's my fault. Yeah. No, Black Rectangle's good. The funny thing though is that nobody ever gets the name right. It's like not. I feel like nobody does. When we first got our first office in Boston, what did it say? Did it say like Black Pyramid on the outside?
It was Bright Triangle. Everything, all the signage was Bright Triangle. Yeah. Clients, I'd have to just say Baskin Robbins because they'd see BR on everything, so I'd be like Baskin Robbins. It's fine. Yeah. It's easy to remember. So, but everybody butchered it. But it's a great name, and it
came from the idea of like the film screen, but like any film screen. So like all these. It's sort of like I want to say it's like an inversion of Black Mirror. So if Black Mirror, is like, everybody knows the show Black Mirror, and it's, Black Mirror means the device you carry with yourself or your computer screen, that Black Mirror, which is another thing that I think very funny, that just, to go all John D for a second, that we all now essentially have our own scrying mirror. If we just don't turn it on, we can use it. Right. But yeah, that's, yeah. I totally lost my train of thought. I lost my train of thought. I had something I was saying, and then I talked about Black Mirrors. Bright Rectangle. Bright Rectangle. Yeah. It's the Bright Rectangle. So you go to the theater, it's a Bright Rectangle. Look at your TV, it's a Bright Rectangle. So we make films. Nothing any smarter than that. But I do want to give. I want to make sure to to plug, just because they're my friends and they do great stuff on it. Drew did all the music for both Corpse and The Hill in the Hole, and like all by himself pretty much. He's a kind of fantastic composer. And John Parfit, who does who's not with us today, but he did the sound mix for it, and he has his own podcast, which people should check out. He's a cool dude that's interested in all these same things. And what's the name of his podcast? I'm totally blanking, Bill.
Yeah, I am too. I don't have my notes in front of me.
Dear Lord, John,
Yeah,
forgive
perfect.
me. I'm looking it up right now.
Look him up though. Yeah, John's great. So yeah, but Drew,
it's a great soundtrack from Drew. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Now, what about the other people from the Fortiana fields that you have in this movie?
Well, besides Adam Gorightly, we have cameos from Tim Banal and Lauren Coleman. Tim Banal is. I wish we had more Tim Banal in there. Yeah, that's all I got to say. Tim Banal's a star in the making. Hollywood, get ready.
Yeah, and Lauren gave us a solid morning at the Zoology Museum.
Oh,
which we Chris and I sort of had this. So after shooting it was I don't know if we want to go into any of that. We shot 10 days, which was a like an endurance challenge to get this out. And then we went back for maybe two weekends of pickups, and so we were able to schedule. We were able to run up to Portland and shoot with Lauren Coleman, and he's terrific. Lauren's great, and so lucky to figure something out. Unfortunately, we I don't know how to put this without, again, yeah, I keep on walking into it in terms of spoiling things. So I won't say anything else about Lauren's role, but yeah, no, I mean, he sort of, again, like sort of a spiritual godfather to the creation of what we were doing. And I mean, part of this was like, I mean, the intent with The Hill and the Hole especially was to sort of like, it was really it was a Fortean story. I mean, the character of Tom Digby, whether knowing or not, is sort of this paradigmatic Fortean investigator who's neither skeptic nor believer, who's just sort of following the trail wherever it leads, but which is inexorably, for some Fortean researchers, it's through and beyond the veil. So he was in the same way that like a Robert Kirk, you know, the priest / folklorist behind the Secret Commonwealth, you know, ended up vanishing at the end of his investigations. Digby is this, you know, he's following this story, or he's following the data where it takes him, and it just happens to be, you know, at this sort of, you know, extraterrestrial. Again, I'm spoiling things. I'll hold back. I'll stop. Right. Cut my mic off. Internet, please. So, yeah. So
it ends at a mound. That's very weird.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Which is a real mound.
Oh, really?
We won't.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
What's the mythology around the real mound?
I don't know if there is any. I mean, maybe there is. Well, there is none that I think we came across. Okay. However, I did get violently ill when we went out there, and I actually had to be driven back from the mound to the hotel because I started throwing up. We think it was food poisoning, but I don't know.
Have you ever had a reaction like that to anything before?
I have not. No.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I didn't have the reaction though.
No, he didn't. Not at all. Could have just been the Mexican.
It's pretty interesting that you ought to recount how you came across that mound, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, we did some pretty intense location scouting. We were so Caitlin Williams, who should, you know, ideally we'd have everyone on this call. Yeah, and so Caitlin, she's out of Santa Fe, but she was helping us sort of research places and to find, you know, a location that has
she's like buddy.
The ideal.
I love that girl.
Caitlin's fantastic. The best. Yeah. So Caitlin's the waitress in the diner scene, but she was also our production designer, and she was helping us scout. But really difficult to find, you know, the ideal ranch with a, you know, this you know, a mound that precisely the one we were looking for. But it just so happened that driving down I-20 from Denver International Airport to Santa Fe, which is like a 5 or 6 hour trip, you know, you get south of Pueblo. There's this this butte just rises starkly out of the landscape, and it's really an unforgettable sight. And my brother and I were driving down there. We're like, that's the mound. Like that's it. I mean, that's it. Unfortunately, we're looking at locations in Santa Fe, but the area. No, I mean it is sort of anomalous to a degree. It's due east of San Luis Valley, near the Spanish Peaks. It's in this sort of weird volcanic field. There's the iridium layer, which the impact, the meteor impact that's caused the great extinction with the dinosaurs. That layer is visible just south of Huerfano Butte, actually in Raton, which is the town that ended up like sort of adopting the production. But Huerfano Butte does have history. It has lots of history. I'm trying to think if it has anything that might satisfy sort of like, I can't think of like, there's no sort of ufology or something surrounding that. I mean, but that area is, I mean, just due east of there is San Luis Valley, which is, a definite hotspot.
Right.
Near Raton. Who's the guy who runs the Raton Inn?
Oh yeah, Bunny and
Jason Bennett. Yeah.
Bunny and Jason.
He was telling us about that extinct volcano.
Remember that? Yes, the Capulan. Yep. Well, there is a mound, not the one that's there, but there's what's it called? The one that's near the Boy Scout reservation, the Boy Scout camp there. Supposedly it was the gateway to hell. The hill over there.
We filmed at a couple mounds.
Yeah. There was another one we didn't film at that was right near a Boy Scout camp that's probably like an hour away from Raton. That supposedly is a legend within legend. Local legend is a gateway to hell. And then there's the town near there too that has the Templar stone.
And the main mound we were talking about is on private property, which is kind of unique.
Yes,
it's not something that anybody can visit.
Yeah.
You can. I mean, it's right. They were actually doing some construction.
You can drive up to it, but it's not a tourist destination.
No. So what we did was we had to, and again, details, and I'm totally blowing the magic of cinema here, but we basically had to mesh this location, Huerfano Butte, with a ranch in Vallecitos, which is hundreds of miles away. So we were combining this mound, and it was a tough sell for the actors. I don't know how you took it, Adam, but explaining this to the actors that mound that's hundreds of miles, east of here. That's the mound, and there, just this look like, why aren't we shooting there? Like why aren't we? And so we were kind of combining these two locations. Vallecitos also very interesting, and right due south of San Luis Valley and west of Taos. So there was a certain voodoo of location that we were trying to. I mean, we had considered like, let's shoot out near the great sand dunes in San Luis Valley. Let's try to do something, out there or like Area 52 near Dulce or but we just, I don't know, either it was too on the nose or these locations just, and again, Caitlin was responsible for the ranch finding Raton. These places popped for us, and then as we started to go into their backstories, then we started to learn. Oh, wow, this is a volcanic field, and evidence of human settlements going back 12,000 years, and so these places were very interesting. Were they underground UFO bases? No, maybe. I don't know. Verdict is out. So
no. Yeah, it's the Uraca Mesa is the one it's the gateway to hell that's over near the Philmont Scout Ranch. I just had to check that out in northern New Mexico. But we had to. I mean, one of the great things about the whole filmmaking trip is that we do things completely like DIY, seat of your pants. I mean, that's kind of how probably comes from all of my when I was a young kid playing punk rock and the sort of DIY ethos of that. Right. This was, we must have driven thousands of miles. I mean, we were all the way up from like the southern part, not like the Mexican border, but we were all the way through Colorado. And I mean, it was a kind of a crazy road trip, but that land out there, that high desert, there is something about that. I mean, Bill had been out there before, and I know that Adam had, but it's, first time I'd been out for that extended period of time. And maybe it was the altitude sickness, but it is a strange, spooky, weird, uncanny place up there.
Yeah. And why is it called the Gateway to Hell?
The Araka Mesa, it's basically over, it is, let's see, if you go west of Raton, you end up going past Cimarron, and the legend is that there's this mesa that's at the top there, and that I believe, and don't quote me on this because it's all from memory, that there was it is a local, like a native legend, that there was a woman, I believe it was one of those sort of like make a deal with the devil to bring back your loved one type thing that happened up there. But ever since, apparently on the top of Araka Mesa there have been strange happenings, and it's referred to as, in local legend, as a gateway to hell. We did not get a chance to get up there though. So
Cimarron is where basically the Benowitz story kind of started.
Right. Yeah.
Really?
It's trying to remember her name. Myrna Hansen had her encounter with aliens, UFOs, some cows being sucked up into the spaceship, and she went up into the ship with her and her son and saw the calf being dissected, and later she ended up in an underground facility, which was maybe kind of Dulce. And Paul Benowitz came across her story, and he put her under hypnotic regression. That kind of launched the whole Dulce thing. So that's all in that area, Cimarron and Eagle's Nest, which is all of that's in that general area near Raton, where we did a lot of the filming.
Interesting.
Yeah, Cimarron is really, so we met somebody in the town there that in Raton that was sort of following up these Templar stones that Chris was mentioning, and so there was this there were like these, I believe they were like Moorish exiles that had sort of colonized San Luis Valley at some point, and their DNA could be traced down into Cimarron. And so you'd find these Templar, these stones that were found with Templar standards engraved in them. And, there's more than one, there's more than two. And it's an unusual area. I mean, there's no question about it. How
old did the Templars start?
So,
what was the dating? Did they date them? We actually went and saw one. It's like it's being used as a doorstop in this in this old hotel that Wild Bill Hickok used to stay at. I don't know. I can't remember the dating. There was this. We interviewed this guy that was out there that had basically relocated out there to specifically investigate these, and he said he had some stuff that he'd found that he's gonna talk about soon. Haven't heard hide nor hair of him yet, but I don't know if they dated it to anything, but it is. It looks like they're not that. You can find pictures of them online if you just probably look in Cimarron and Templar stone. They look they're about as tall as like a headstone, but they're engraved. It's very obviously Templar crosses, and there's symbols and glyphs on there that it would have had to have been somebody of the order.
And so the question becomes, how did they get there?
Right. And that's, the whole legend of sort of this, lost Templar contingent that was out there in the Southwest for some reason, and we don't know what. I think what have some of the speculations been? Grail or,
Yeah, it's well, and this is slightly tangential, but so Robert Howard wrote a short story called The Mound, and this was it's essentially there's a Moorish vampire buried in the mound, and so there's this whole thread about like Moors settling. I believe H.P. Lovecraft also has like some sort of there's
the Mound story, but that was the one he ghost wrote. It's essentially about I think it was that was Conquistadors, not Templars. Anyway, sorry, interrupted.
So anyhow, there's this whole thinking about, I believe it's these Moorish exiles. So perhaps, just touch points with the Templars, bringing some of the Templar horde. I don't know, I mean, it's this is entirely speculative, just throwing things out there. But I think that's some of it. I don't know where Howard, was receiving this information. He possibly channeling it as well. Who knows?
So what other
we're not experts? We're filmmakers.
What other high strangeness stuff comes from that area of like Southwest New Mexico that you're aware of?
Oh my gosh! Who wants to start?
We have Socorro. Yeah. Go right.
Yeah,
Adam, you got this.
Well, all the UFO history for sure.
Yeah, I mean
Roswell and Socorro and
right.
Cimarron and Eagle's Nest, which was ground zero for the whole Benowitz affair, and underground bases, and on and on and on. The cattle mutilations. I mean, that was the area there.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
Basically, northern New Mexico into Colorado, that whole, it's just crazy with all that history. Plus, you got these mounds popping up. It's like a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, starting just north of there, Alamosa. I mean, the San Luis Valley. It's where you have like Snippy the horse, which was, I think, one of the first major mutilation cases. Yeah, and I mean that area on down. You get further down south of there into New Mexico. Gosh, I wish I had done my homework. There are spots. Ghost Ranch, nearby Ghost Ranch. There's a small town which
Skinwalker
also,
Ranch,
I know
whatever's going on there.
Skinwalker Ranch, Aztecs. Yeah. I mean, over towards like the west. Oh, so you're talking about another one.
Yeah, Skinwalker. You're right. That's up north. But anyhow, I mean, it's that area into Dulce, that corner of New Mexico. I mean, there's the so-called Archuleta Mesa, so-called Area 52, which is Archuleta Mesa. That's the the stories about the underground UFO bases, but there are stories that just go back, centuries into the
and even the stuff like more recently from like Diana Walsh Pasulka, American Cosmic, like where she goes near Painted Rock. I mean, I know that she doesn't really disclose the location, but it's near the Painted Mountains there, where she goes with one of the I think Tyler, quote unquote, to get some of that debris. Is in that northern New Mexico area, I'm pretty sure.
Mm. So let's change direction on this with the almost the normalization of the paranormal on television, like with all these different shows. Where do you see this stuff going, like as far as documentaries and TV shows and stuff over the next few years?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think it's probably particularly appropriate too with the success of, both Hellier and the relative success of the Jeremy Corbell Kenyon stuff. And then what else? I mean, you can point to the Blue Book, a fiction piece that's on
history,
the one about Hynek on history, and then the short-lived piece. I mean, is Tom DeLonge's TV show still going on? Did they go through their full season?
I don't know. I didn't watch it.
Yeah, I didn't watch it either. I mean, I don't know. You guys can also chime in on, what your thoughts of this are, but, I'm not sure. I think you're probably going to get a lot more people that are creating things that are more sort of personal, like personal narratives of their, journeys into the weird, similar to what you get with Hellier. I would imagine that's the way people are going to go. I don't know if it's the kind of thing where you're going to see. Also, Seth Breedlove's got his stuff coming out too, his new stuff coming out. So, maybe it's, maybe in general, we're in for, a little bit more of like a serious, influx of, not to denigrate any of the paranormal shows that have existed before, but, I was never a fan, and honestly, I never watched any of those because they're pretty much, I know even people that are, within the circle of folks that go on the podcasts, Paul Kimball and stuff like that, have these shows and are, I think really great in terms of what they research, but it was never my bag. Whereas I feel like, even though, as I have publicly said before, I just didn't engage. Nothing really clicked with me for Hellier. I appreciate like what they're doing. I think is good. And I think it's, what Seth's doing is good because I think what they're doing is they're approaching it less from an entertainment standpoint, though I understand that is something that they, want to do, and Seth especially wants to do. But I think at least them personally as filmmakers, it's coming from a much more a place of sort of much more subjective interest and less sensationalism, and I think that for me is a good step forward. How it's getting represented fiction-wise, I don't know. Where's the future of that goes? I mean, I'm personally like the kind of supernatural depiction of the supernatural you see in something like Mandy, Panis Cosmatos' Mandy. Like that for me is like that in Twin Peaks, or that's my kind of depiction of the supernatural. But I don't know if you're going to get as many of those. Perhaps Color Out of Space. I mean, that just came out, and it seems to be getting pretty good reviews. So who knows?
It's amazing. It's for a Lovecraft adaptation. It was fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, if there is a wave of the weird, we would certainly like to be part of it, because this is definitely the kind of like subject matter and material that us as filmmakers, want to engage with and watch and make with other people and share. So.
Anyone else have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the fiction wave of the fiction wave will be interesting. I mean, we're sort of at that point with, I think Hellier, but just based on descriptions, it seems like that.
Yeah, you haven't seen it. You haven't seen it yet, have you?
No, I haven't seen it yet, but I feel like that. It's funny because when we were doing the Band-Aid stuff, we were sort of pitching something similar. We had a few production companies come to us, and we were pitching something similar, and they totally didn't get it. Like at the time, there was like they couldn't wrap their head around what that was. But now that group has successfully, pulled that off, and it's popular, and it's almost as if that form has sort of reached its ultimate, flowering or whatever it is. It's and I haven't seen it, but it's moved beyond the, like the Ghost Hunters sort of thing. They've moved into another spot. I was just going to point out, I love the story about Spielberg working with Jacques Vallée on Close Encounters, and Close Encounters in terms of, if we were to see a new fiction wave, Close Encounters is a good sort of like benchmark, just in terms of how, there was that whole tug of war between Vallée and Spielberg in terms of like how to depict the aliens, how do we depict this experience, and Spielberg was doing this for the masses, but the reaction from somebody like a Kenneth Anger, who underground filmmaker, hardcore. About his approach to the occult, he openly wept at the premiere of what did he weep at the premiere of Close Encounters, or was he just like I murderously jealous of?
I think that's the probably both. I think that's like the legend and rumor. Yeah.
Yeah, damn good.
And I think that's movie.
It is a good movie. Yeah. And at the time, it like impacted a sea change.
Yeah.
So if we saw something like that, I mean, so for instance, Hereditary is whereas it's a cultism on its, it's just very much a, and it's a good movie, but it doesn't really. I don't know if it does it. I don't know if that's. I don't know, and it would be interesting to see somebody.
It's certainly weird in the way that it depicts demonology. I think. Yes. I mean, if I had to choose in terms of representing, quote unquote, authentic engagement with like demonic research, there was this film called, was it called A Dark Song? It was like you remember that one? It's basically about somebody. It's going and doing the Abramelin ritual, but it's not really Abramelin ritual. They say it is in a house, yeah, it's interesting. It's a very subdued sort of like what's it called when you lock everybody in a room? What's the name of that type of show?
Quarantine.
Yeah, what's it called? Quarantine. No, yeah, right. Quarantine.
A bottle episode.
Bottle episode. It's like a bottle episode. Yeah. Stay at home. Right.
Well, we're talking about two different things, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reality show, documentary, things about the occult or UFOs, and artistic renditions.
Sure. But where does something like Hellier fit? Is it a reality show or is it a documentary?
It's kind of in between those two, I think.
Yeah.
Because they took some artistic license, and I didn't watch.
Oh?
We keep losing him.
I think that's Adam we lost this time. Anyway, yeah, I will circle back to the fact that John Parfit's podcast is Belief Hole. And if people want to check that out,
Belief Hole. That's a cool name.
Hole. Yeah, it is a cool name. And they're cool dudes and they talk about cool stuff. So really people should check that out. Yep. I think we lost Adam. He's joined. He's
still technically there.
Oh, he's still technically there?
Yep.
Okay. Well, his knowledge was so deep we had to be cut out by the masses.
He's unlistenable at this point because he was so deep.
That's right.
We couldn't process what he was saying. He's muting and unmuting, but
that is completely true about Adam Gorightly.
Hello?
You can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Yeah, what I was getting to with Hillier, hopefully you don't lose me again, was the episodes I found most interesting were somewhere between like a documentary and a artistic rendition where they were getting into these altered states of consciousness, and they were kind of playing with them, and you can direct altered states of consciousness either intentionally or unintentionally to move in certain directions. So they were definitely charting some new ground there in a few of the episodes. I didn't watch all of the episodes, but those were the ones that I found most interesting. The one where the dude who they first started doing this with the guy who they, as I recall, they basically implanted an alien experience memory, and he ran with that. Yeah, and that was very bizarre.
That's totally bizarre.
So I found that
and potentially like unethical at that.
Yeah.
Well, that too. That's where I was going next. So that's it's a slippery slope there. If I was at a certain place in time, if I was making a documentary of that type, I might have ventured kind of into those areas of altered consciousness. But that's a slippery slope for sure.
Yeah, and especially with hypnosis.
One documentary that I think people have been talking about a lot is Alan Stevelman's documentary, Witness of Another World.
Yeah.
Which, if anybody hasn't seen that, excellent. I think that's on Amazon. It is excellent. Yeah.
Yes, it's on Amazon.
Yeah. It's I'm sure everybody's heard about it. For those of you that haven't, it's a film about a man in it's not. Is it? Where are they? Is it Chile?
No,
Chile, I think.
I'm not sure.
Maybe. He is anyway, he was had an abduction experience or contact experience when he was young, and it's essentially just like a portrait of him and his experience, and the filmmaker sort of puts him in touch with his indigenous roots, because he does have a lineage to sort of the native population of the South American country that he lives in. And
that connects more to a shamanic experience at that point.
And it connects it much more to a shamanic experience. Yeah, exactly. Which is really interesting. But it's, I think, really tastefully done, and very honest and very direct. And it features Jacques Vallée, which is always, I'll watch many things with him in it. But he comes down, and he actually met this kid when he was a kid. He was one of the cases that Vallée studied, and so he's coming back to talk to him again. But it's really nice too, because you get to see this sort of positive trajectory for this person that had been affected by it. But yeah, it's definitely worth checking out.
Let me interject again. I think the direction it should go with these, however you want to term it, reality show, documentary, is kind of what Bill was doing with Mandate. You hit the road and you talk to people, but, you don't have an idea. Like, I've been approached, by different TV programs before, and they want you to say something. They got, they already know where the direction they want to take the program. Right, they want some sensationalism. We don't necessarily need that. Let's just get in there and look at strange phenomena and talk to different people and create something interesting like that,
Yeah.
Well, I find it interesting when I hear about Hellier and that they had to take license with some aspects just to, I guess, pull out, experiences that you otherwise wouldn't be able to depict within the format. When we hit the road, I will say, especially on that first trip, and I don't know who coined. I know somebody's using this phrase "engage the strange," but it's definitely what sort. I mean, we had sort of planned things loosely around like certain window times, and we wanted to be in certain places at certain times, and we kind of had this rough idea of like this is not something we should be doing. We're playing with fire here, and there were all these unusual synchronicities that would occur on these road trips that would just sort of like unfold. But it's impossible, it's impossible to like convince a producer that this is a good idea, spend money on this, So you just kind of have to roll with it. And but I mean, it's
the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as getting somebody to invest in, hey, we want to go out and let things happen, and let synchronicity take its course. It's like, okay, well, what exactly are you presenting here?
Yeah. Well, they had Alan Greenfeld on season 2. Is that right? Like,
the Cypher of the Supernauts.
Yeah. So that was something, and we were actually discussing this with Olaf, possibly because
Olaf
we
Phillips
interacted with
magazine,
Paranoia. Yeah.
Paranoia. Sorry,
so
Paranoia.
Yeah, and so we interacted early on with Alan Greenfeld, just briefly. I think he might have been interested in the road trips, and we were talking to Olaf because I think Olaf's publishing Cypher right now, if I've got that right. So so we were thinking, yeah, totally. Why don't we employ the Cypher? Like, go to locations that have some sort of, we punch some of these terms into the software, and I mean, things like that, kind of Fortean kitschy sort of stuff. But it's interesting that they ran with that. I don't know. That's like an explicit component of that second season? Is that right, Alan Greenfeld's?
A couple episodes for sure.
A couple episodes, yeah.
That's great.
So, it is. It's cool. It's cool that book is getting so much press now. Like again, and if anybody doesn't know, I mean, I think pretty much anybody who's listening to this podcast does. But maybe I'll tell it because Bill, you don't know. Ren Collier, who's oftentimes on this podcast too, he's created, there is a online site that you can put in. It is basically that Thelemic alphabet. It's the Kabbalah, the new Aeon, that exists there. So you can go in and I don't know if there was software before or if there was a site, but his that he put up there is really great.
All right. Well, we're just about out of time. So once again, you have 2 movies that are going to be coming available. What's the actual date they're going to be available?
Well, I think that they should be available if this airs at some point in the next, week or so. They should be available then. I think we're putting them up at the end of this week, so they'll be there. And Amazon Prime. Yeah, look for The Hill in the Hole and Corpse.
All right. Is it just going to be on Amazon?
Right now, it is just on Amazon Prime, but it will be other places soon. You can even if you don't have Prime, you can go there. It'll be a cheap rental. So.
Are you planning on making hard copies of these for people?
At some point, we probably will, but that is the costs at this point are sometimes prohibitive if you want to do it right. And we'd probably want to do a Blu-ray. So yeah, we're not that will be a little bit out there. As of right now, we're just doing digital.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I thank all of you for joining us. Any websites anyone wants to plug in here?
Well, you can always go to brightrectangle.com to check out any of the stuff that we're doing. And Adam should plug his book.
Yes.
Which one?
All of them.
AdamGorightly.com.
All right.
I hate plugging.
And Drew, you can check out Drew's music too. Drew O'Doherty.
It's true. I make music.
Hey, he makes music. Hey,
is there a website?
There's most of the music that's easy at this point for people to find that's associated with my name is more song oriented and not really like the type of work I've done for their soundtracks. So I don't really have a spot for that yet, but
your songs are on Bandcamp though. That's a good place to go.
Yeah.
All right. Bandcamp.
And there may be some, limited edition original motion picture soundtracks on cassette or something coming.
Yeah.
Cassette, right on.
Totally.
No, it's some good stuff. You do great work, Drew.
Oh, thanks a lot, Adam.
All right. Thank you all for joining us tonight.
All right. Thanks, Seriah. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Seriah.
Take care. See you guys.
Where Did the Road Go is made possible in part by our awesome patrons. And for those of you pledging $10 or more, an extra special thanks. Allison Cook, Super Inframan, Tim, Lindsay Trebet, Stone Wilderness, Luke Osborne, Rob Drummond, Alex Whitcomb, Damian Tallman, Edu Camahort, Tactical Therapist, Janet Bunderson, 36 Dingo, Maria, Jennifer Campbell, American Rambler, The Great Change, Kevin, Matthew Sproul, John Rutledge Foster, Eric Citron, Andy McNamara, Sasha Jorg, Matthias Sunby, James Lattimore, Sam Sheeran, Dominic O'Malley, Christopher Vaughn, Riker and Stark, Sean Cosgrove, Jose A., Roger Gonzalez, Craig Cicernos, Ray Benedetto, Linz Jackson K., Alfred Tuttle, Kevin Schreck, Patricia Giaquinta, William Lovelace, Mark Brady, Chris is a hot dog a sandwich, and Carla Mahoney. Thank you all so very much. As our friends in Bright Rectangle Films said, you can check out their stuff on Amazon if you have Amazon Prime. But if you don't, and you're a patron of this show, you're going to get links to both Corpse and The Hill in the Hole. So, courtesy of Chris Ernst and Bright Rectangle Films. All right, I have a bunch of patron stuff coming up. We're trying to do extra shows since we're all kind of in this very annoying lockdown. Hopefully this will get some semblance of normalcy sometime soon. I mean, it's not going to lift overnight, but slowly, hopefully things can get back to normal without another outbreak. That would be very nice, I think. I want to give a special thanks to Holger Klein and Patricia W. for some very kind donations this week. via PayPal. And if you want to help out the show, you can donate via PayPal. You can become a patron and get a bunch of extra content as well. I'm looking into some other methods for those of you who do not like Patreon. And hopefully we'll have those set up soon, too. I know not everyone is a huge fan of Patreon, and I understand that. But so far they seem to be the best system to go with. I have one I'm going to check out, and maybe one we're just going to install right on the website, in which case we don't even have to deal with a third party, and that would be great. So thank you for everyone who supports this show. Thank you for everyone who has donated, who is a patron, who's a listener, who has contacted me. It means the world. It really does. If you have a story you want to talk about on the air, you just want us to read your story on the air on a listener story show, send it to stories@wheredidtheroadgo.com. If you just want to contact me, contact@wheredidtheroadgo.com. We also have merch on the website. I hardly ever mention this, but we have T-shirts and all kinds of stuff. If you go to the website, there's a link for TeePublic, and there's all kinds of stuff you can get with a ton of different designs on it. A couple from Jeff Ritzman and a couple from Tim Renner, and they're really cool. And please, everyone out there, stay healthy. We'll see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.